Dark Souls 3 has been officially announced. Even though it is a pre-rendered cutscene trailer, there still are a lot of interesting things within it. This video itself will be broken down into two segments. The first segment will essentially be me analyzing the trailer itself, breaking down some scenes and frames that I found interesting, and basically giving you my opinions and thoughts and speculation on them. The second half of the video will essentially be me giving out the facts and information that was released after E3 about the game itself, while also showing you some new images that were also released. So, without any further ado, let us begin. Alright, so as the trailer starts off, we see a bonfire, a normal procedure in Dark Souls Soul series, and we see a character in the background dragging what looks like a dead body. And then we're presented with the quote, "Now only embers remain." Now, if you played Dark Souls 1, this line should look very, very familiar. In fact, it's one of the first things you see while playing the game. In the opening cinematic, this line appears.
Even now, there are only embers.
Now, the woman who grasps that little tiny ember floating through the air is actually Anastasia of Astora, who's an NPC in Dark Souls 1. I'll go more in depth and detail with her here in a few seconds as the trailer goes on. The thing I find interesting is that they talk about embers, so does that mean that the first flame has finally gone out and there's nothing left of it? Or is the first flame actually somehow reigniting itself? I don't really know, it's only speculation at this point, but it is very, very interesting. Now, the next part of the trailer, we are shown a completely decimated ancient kingdom, completely filled with destroyed archways, crumbling towers, and what looks like ash and smoke up in the air. The more I studied this part of the trailer, the more I thought to myself, this looks very, very familiar. After reviewing the opening cinematic of Dark Souls 1, that's when it hit me that it actually looks a lot like Lordran, a completely destroyed Lordran nonetheless. Now, I was under the impression after playing Dark Souls 2 that Drangleic itself was actually a future representation of Lordran. But after seeing these images, I'm kind of thinking that may not be the case, but it's only a theory. In the next scene, we are shown a bunch of undead, looks like hags, traveling through the ash desert, possibly even through the city that we just saw in the previous scene. They appear to have a staff or a walking stick with a incense at the edge of it. They also all have a, looks like a rock or some sort, a package chained to the back of their backs. It's not really made clear if they're doing this by choice or if somebody's making them do it. Who are these lovely ladies? Your guess is as good as mine, I guess. The scene ends with us looking up at a hilltop, possibly even in that ancient city at another castle. Alright, in the next scene we are shown what I assume is a young woman reaching for a crown. Now, there were 4 crowns, I believe, in Dark Souls 2. The 3 DLC ones, and then there was the King Vendrick crown. What I found interesting about this crown itself is that there appears to be some sort of black vortex on the back of the crown. It could just be a reflection, but it's starting to look, it looks a little bit like it's some sort of entity, like maybe the crown's alive, or it's corrupted, or something like that. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Now, connected to that hand-reaching crown scene is the woman putting the crown upon her head. Now, this will actually be the part of the video where I go in-depth about my theories and speculation about Anastasia of Astora. If you recall the backstory of Anastasia, she actually couldn't speak to you in the beginning of Dark Souls 1. In fact, she couldn't even if she wanted to because her tongue was removed, either by herself or somebody cut it out. Now, after you restore her tongue later on in the game, she doesn't even want you to speak to her then because she feels that she's impure and anything she says is cursed and shameful. Now, what she actually did to feel this way is not really made clear. There's no lore description about it. It's all speculated and theorized. Now, my theory is that maybe Anastasia is in some way responsible for the undead curse. Now, if shown in this scene, this crown is in fact corrupted and maybe she put it on her head, maybe that's what spread the disease in the first place and caused the corruption. Now, the main reason I think that she's responsible for the curse is because at the end of Dark Souls 1, if you side with Frampt and you go and talk to Anastasia, she'll actually assume that you're going to link the fire, and she'll be relieved that she can die as a human and not go hollow and go rogue. Now, they may just be a normal thought that she'd be able to die as a human, but she also might be somewhat relieved that her burden that she's been carrying around is finally lifted, and nobody's affected by the undead curse that she may have in fact caused. Now, I don't know, that's just a theory of mine, but go ahead and let me know what you guys think down below. In one of the final scenes, we're shown a giant bell tower with a bunch of bridges and archways leading down to what looks like a graveyard along with a giant tomb. Now, what I find really interesting about this scene, other than the bell tower and the archways, is that it looks very familiar. It may just solidify my theories on it being Lordran, is that it looks a lot like Firelink Shrine. If you recall in Dark Souls 1, Firelink Shrine had a lot of archways and bridges, and in the back part of Firelink Shrine there was in fact a graveyard with a shit ton of graves. If you look at this trailer and you look at these scenes from Dark Souls 1, they do look very, very familiar. I don't know, you guys comment down below, let me know what you think about it. Now, the final scene of the trailer may in fact just be the most interesting. The giant grave in the graveyard opens up and it appears to be the giant lord boss from Dark Souls 2 pops out of it. However, he's a little different this time. He gives a real-world meaning to the phrase burning desire. Now, I'm not really sure what this specifies. Is something reanimating his corpse? Is he coming back to life? Or is there like an ancient first flame inside of him or something like that? Now, if you remember the main plot of Dark Souls 2, we're only told one side of the story. Vendrick crosses the sea, he steals something from the land of the giants, he captures some of them, and he brings them back. The giants then cross the sea to get revenge on King Vendrick and attack his city. And my theory about this is that we may in fact see the other side of the story. This game may take place in the land of the giants, and we may in fact see Vendrick attack the giants and find out what he in fact stole. Most people speculate that it's the kiln that's at the end of Dark Souls 2 that you sit in, or it could be something else. Now, this may in fact not be the giant lord, but it looks very similar. If you look at these screenshots and footage that I've taken, he seems to have the same weapon, the same crown, and the same outlook. He even has that same, like, cape on the back of his arms and whatnot. I know, you guys let me know what you think down below. Alright, so that's pretty much all there is for the trailer itself. It was pretty short. This next part will be me going over some new images that have been shown, giving my opinions on those, and also listening to some of the stuff that has been confirmed about the game itself so far. Alright, so the first thing to be confirmed is dragons. Dragons are in fact back, as they are in all Souls games. And I really like the design of this one. There's a lot of horns going down the back of its necks, and the wings, instead of being attached from the back, they're just attached to its forearms. It's blowing fire, blocking the player's path. Looks to like another castle. And the character himself looks like he's rather skinny. He might even be hollow at this point. The next image shows a rather big brute with a giant club. And it looks a little bit like the orcs from Blighttown. However, he's fully armored at this point. The one thing I did find interesting about this image is that it looks like he's smashing a bonfire. And I heard a rumor that you'll actually be able to place bonfires where you want, but what if in fact enemies can destroy bonfires? I don't know, it might be a little too hardcore for most people, but I guess we'll wait and see. The next image, we can see the player, or at least an image of the player going through a, looks like some sort of a castle with a torch in hand. The next thing is a concept art of another castle, or at least another image of a castle. Things are burning, people's got arrows and spears and swords through them, and looks pretty chaotic. And of course this is the graveyard once again, the bell tower of the town, and the huge tomb that I was talking about. In this shot we see another concept art of, looks like either an enemy or an NPC. All I know is it's got a badass sword. I hope we can get that in the game, some badass flame magma sword. Looks pretty fucking sweet. And this last part will bring me to my main point about Dark Souls 3, is that in all the concept art and all the trailers, I never see the player as a human, so I wonder if maybe you can't go human anymore. Maybe there's no way to restore your humanity, and maybe you have to go through the entire game as a hollow. Information that has been confirmed at this point is that Hidetaka Miyazaki is in fact back as game director. It appears that IGN and other gaming websites were given a hands-on first experience with Dark Souls 3, a live demo. A lot of the areas were interconnected just like previous Souls titles. Apparently they were launched into an area known as the Wall of Lodolith, a crumbling stone fortress similar to the first game's Undead Parish, with cobbled bridges, basements, and walkways both vast and dangerous, narrow, made up of interwoven environment. They describe something new in the game. One of the newer concepts is something called a ready stance. Now, this ready stance apparently allows players to utilize devastating special abilities like a powerful slash attack or an upward thrust that sends enemies flying into the air. Apparently it's a lot like Bloodborne, so it seems like they found some sort of common ground between the Dark Souls franchise and the Bloodborne franchise, if Bloodborne does in fact become a franchise. Now, weapons that were shown off during the demo apparently were a greatsword, a long and short bow, a set of dual-wielding blades called Legion scimitars, and some firebombs. Now, the part of the interview that I found really interesting about this website, and which I'll leave in the description below, is that when asked about the faceless giant, Miyazaki referred to him as the Lord of Cinder. Is it Gwyn? Is it the player character from Dark Souls 1? He hasn't really made a comment on it. Anyway, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you guys liked all my theories, my trailer breakdown and everything, all the information that I had. And if you have any more information, go ahead and leave it down below. I'm sure everybody wants to hear it. Anyone that watches this video, I'm sure was probably a big fan of the game, so go ahead and leave it down below. And if any more trailers come out, I'll be sure to break those down as well, analyze those, and theorize and do all that good stuff with it. Dark Souls 3 itself is stated for release in early 2016, which I speculate is probably going to be pushed back to either mid-summer or October, November of 2016, but that's just me. Anyway, until next time, catch you later.